சொல்லு சொல்லு நான் இங்கே இருந்துச்சா எவ்வளவு வருது அங்க இருந்தது சரி எவ்வளவு குடிச்சுட்டு வச்சிருந்தானா நமக்கு என்ன தெரியும் Okay, students, today we will see about the development of heart. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So clinically it is very important. So the congenital cardiac anomalies, your septal defects like that, your atrial septal defect, ventricular septal defect. Next, your any other congenital anomaly you know? Congenital anomalies of heart. Fallop's tetralogy. These are all common cases. Yes, you will come across, yes, dextrocardia and all. So that basis of those congenital anomalies we have to learn. So that is important. That's why if you go to the clinical side, you can diagnose the case, you can know about the pathophysiology of the cases. So this is the competence is the common one. Yesterday I told. For your development of lung, heart, and pleura, same 25.2 we have. So SLOs at the end of this class, so you should be able to describe the development of heart. At the same time, we have models. So in the model, you should be explain the your normal development as well as the what are all the basis for the congenital cardiac anomalies. So we have anomalies model also. So all these models will be demonstrated to you before the examination. We will show all those models, so you should be able to explain during the exam. So first we will say about, once again repeatedly I am projecting this. So this picture is for what? The arrow mark you are seeing. A student, please. Already title is there. It is for the development of intraembryonic mesoderm. Intraembryonic mesoderm. So this is the primitive streak. So primitive pit. So the epiblast cells getting proliferated and passing through this and getting accumulated between ectoderm and endoderm, in between ectoderm and endoderm, to form your intraembryonic mesoderm. So this already we have projected. So now you see that we have migration of these mesodermal cells cranial to the buccopharyngeal membrane also. So that point is important. So the mesoderm present at this level gives rise to our heart. So these mesodermal cells, what we have here on either side, like a horseshoe, is called as pericardial bar. From that only we are having development of heart. So what you have to remember is your development of heart is purely mesodermal in origin. Mesodermal in origin. The pericardial bar, what is formed cranial to the buccopharyngeal membrane, forms our heart. So now see this picture. The ectoderm has been peeled. So now what you are seeing here is the mesoderm. What is given in dotted one is the intraembryonic mesoderm. So already you know that intraembryonic mesoderm is divided into paraxial mesoderm, your intermediate cell mass, and lateral plate mesoderm. So this will be the lateral plate mesoderm on either side. So in the lateral plate mesoderm, we have formation of small spaces. All these small spaces used to form the your intraembryonic coelom. So that already I have explained along with your intraembryonic coelom. Now if you see that intraembryonic coelom, what you have at the site of your pericardial bar is called as pericardial sac. So that is called as pericardial sac. So in relation to that pericardial sac only, we have the development of heart. Now you see that. So this is the your mesoderm. So in this mesoderm, you see you are able to make out red color structure. They are nothing but the accumulation of blood forming cells, blood vessels forming cells. So that is considered as the primary cardiac field. Primary cardiac field. So like a horseshoe, we have the accumulation of your cardiogenic cells cranial to the buccopharyngeal membrane as well as the neural plate, primary cardiogenic area or cardiac field. Now in this cardiac field, you will be having formation of two endothelial heart tubes. So that is important. See this picture, that is your coronal section. See that the here and here, if you make the coronal section of it, you can see this. So now this is your intraembryonic mesoderm. This is intraembryonic coelom. So already very well you know that your lateral plate mesoderm in communication with your endoderm is called as splachnopleuric layer. So this is splachnopleuric layer of intraembryonic mesoderm. So this is somatopleuric layer of intraembryonic mesoderm that is in contact with the ectoderm. So this in this splachnopleuric layer of lateral plate mesoderm, at the site of pericardial primary heart field, we have formation of two endothelial heart tubes. So that is important. So first thing what you have to remember is it is mesodermal in origin. Next point is we have formation of two endothelial heart tubes in the your splachnopleuric layer of intraembryonic mesoderm. That you have to remember. During lateral folding of the embryo, see these next pictures. The picture is not very clear. So this and this. So these are the your angiogenic clusters going to form your endothelial heart tube. So during the lateral folding, so these two endothelial heart tubes are getting fused. Note that. So they are getting fused to form a single tube. So this you have to remember. So during the lateral folding of embryo, the two endothelial heart tubes are getting fused. But of course, that fusion is not complete one that we will see in the next picture. So by this time, note that your development of heart is purely mesoderm. Another point, we have formation of two endothelial heart tubes. During the lateral folding of the embryo, the two heart tubes are getting fused. So here you are able to make out that. So these are the two tubes. So during this lateral folding of the embryo, they are coming very close together and getting fused. Formation of single endothelial heart tube. So from this angiogenic, so that these cells gives rise to blood vessels. That's why it is called as angiogenic clusters of cells accumulated in the primary heart field. Okay, that is in the lateral plate mesoderm like a horseshoe. So later on from this cluster we are having formation of two endothelial heart tubes. Two endothelial heart tubes are formed. During cephalocaudal folding, they are getting fused to form a single tube. So this is called as endothelial heart tube. Already you know that the lining of blood vessels are called as endothelium. So that's why it is called as endothelial heart tubes. So now important point, already you have seen this picture also. So before the cephalocaudal folding of the embryo, this is the arrangement. Cranial to caudal, you have septum transversum, that is our future diaphragm. Next to that, we have the developing heart. So this is the intraembryonic coelom confined to your cardiogenic area. So that's why it is called as pericardial sac. So this is the cardiogenic area or cardiogenic cluster. Next only we have buccopharyngeal membrane. So that is our future mouth. Cranial to the mouth only we have that developing heart as well as the developing diaphragm. So this also already explained. That's why the sympathetic nerve supply is retained. So if you take the sympathetic supply to the heart, it is coming from the cervical part of sympathetic chain. So this is the reason for that. Before cephalocaudal folding, it is cranial to the your buccopharyngeal membrane. It is in the cervical region. That's why that cervical sympathetic chain nerve supply is retained. So after cephalocaudal folding, along this arrow mark, you see that at the cranial end we have septum transversum and developing heart, buccopharyngeal membrane. At the caudal end, we have our connecting stalk. So after this cephalocaudal folding, your connecting stalk and this cranial end will come close together. That's why it is called as cephalocaudal folding. So after cephalocaudal folding, you see that septum transversum comes caudal to the developing heart. Now you see that. So this is your pericardium. So this is the two endothelial heart tubes suspended by a layer of peritoneum called as, this is called as mesocardium. It is suspended by a layer of your peritoneum called as mesocardium. It is called as mesocardium. There is no ventral mesocardium, only dorsal mesocardium is there. Now another important point you have to understand in this, the developing heart is projecting into the pericardium from the dorsal aspect. So this is the dorsal aspect of the embryo. You are seeing your developing brain, notochord and all. So this is the dorsal aspect. This is the ventral aspect. So the developing heart tube is entering into the pericardium from the dorsal aspect. What about lung? How that lung is entering into the pleural cavity from which aspect?
Ventral.
Ventral.
Lateral. Sir,
Medial to lateral. Medial to lateral.
Sir, yes, sir.
So already you have studied in the pleura. How the
Yes,
lung is
yes.
entering into this pleura, it is entering into the
Expand and
pleura.
grow, sir.
It is medial to lateral. From the medial aspect, it enters into it. But your heart is entering from the dorsal aspect. So that's why your base of the heart is present on the dorsal aspect. Am I correct? Base of the heart, where do you have?
Sir, dorsal mid
Base of the heart is down or above?
costal.
Sir, ventral.
Posteriorly, sir.
Ventral, sir.
Bottom.
Base is backwards, sir.
Backwards and
Base
bottom.
is behind,
Base is
posterior.
backwards and upwards.
Inferior posterior.
Yes, infraposterior. It is posterior and above. It is formed by 2/3 of left atrium and 1/3 of right atrium. It is above and behind. Okay, it is posterior, so that is the reason. The heart tube is entering from the posterior aspect. That's why the support of the heart is not down, it is above. So your developing heart tube is entering into the pericardium from the dorsal aspect. If you don't understand completely, these are all the points you have to remember. Mesoderm. Next, two endothelial heart tubes are formed. They are getting fused during the lateral folding of the embryo. The developing heart tube is entering into the pericardium from the dorsal aspect. Before cephalocaudal folding, it is cranial to the buccopharyngeal membrane. These 5 points are important, you have to remember. So now we will see a small video. Change in position of the heart after cephalocaudal folding. So now this is the dorsal view of embryo. Neural fold. So you see that. So this is the site where we have formation of the white streaks are intraembryonic silo. The red color structure is the primary heart field. Now in this sagittal section, see that after cephalocaudal, so this is the buccopharyngeal membrane. After cephalocaudal folding only, it comes down to the thoracic region. See that how that heart tubes are entering into the your pericardium from the dorsal aspect. So the endothelial heart tubes. So this is the pericardium entering on the dorsal aspect. Before cephalocaudal folding, it is cranial. So that is important. So next video, you can see how the two endothelial heart tubes are getting fused. See that, see, these are the two endothelial heart tubes. So during that lateral folding of the embryo, so these two will approach. So you will be having fusion of the two endothelial heart tubes together. See that two tubes are there, they are getting fused. It is on the dorsal aspect suspended by dorsal mesocardium. So this is the dorsal mesocardium. There is no ventral mesocardium. So in the case of stomach, we have ventral and dorsal mesogastrium, but here we have only dorsal mesogastrium. Sorry, mesocardium. Now line diagram to understand that formation of two endothelial heart tubes. So they are getting fused from cranial end to the caudal end. If you trace it down at the caudal end of the heart tube, the fusion is incomplete. So this caudal end is considered as the venous end of the heart tube. So this cranial end is considered as the arterial end of the heart tube. So the two heart tubes, they are getting fused. So endothelial heart tube. So the inner lining of these tubes are endothelium. So that's why we used to tell us endothelial heart tubes. The fusion at the caudal end is incomplete. Now, what are the various parts of the fused endothelial heart tube from cranial end to caudal end? Bulbous cordis. Note that bulbous cordis. Next, we have ventricle. Next we have atrium. Then fourth one is called as sinus venosus. The sinus venosus is the venous end. The bulbous cordis is the arterial end. Other than that, the other two are common. So already you studied about ventricle and atrium. So bulbous cordis, once again that bulbous cordis is divided into proximal conus, distal truncus arteriosus. Truncus arteriosus. That's why the other end is the arterial end. Conus and truncus arteriosus are the parts of bulbous cordis. Next, ventricle, atrium, and sinus venosus. The unfused part, we have two ends. So that is part of your sinus venosus only. So this is important. You have to remember bulbous cordis, ventricle, atrium, and sinus venosus in order. So once again, bulbous cordis is divided into proximal conus, distal truncus arteriosus. So the truncus arteriosus only gives rise to the your major arteries of your heart. Now you see that. So this is bulbous cordis, ventricle, atrium, and sinus venosus. So the two unfused parts are called as right and left horns of sinus venosus. The sinus venosus is having right horn and left horn. Have you heard about the name sinus venosus while
Yes, sir.
reading about
Yes,
the
sir.
gross anatomy?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
yes, yes.
The
Where you heard
smooth
about
part
Sir,
of the
it is absorbed
So
in
the
the
right, the
posterior
left one
part
will
of the
disappear, but the right
atrium.
one will be absorbed by the atrium.
Yes, yes, very good. So the right horn of the sinus venosus is getting enlarged.
The
So
smooth
that is
part of
getting
the right
absorbed into the developing right
Right atrium.
atrium to form the smooth part of the right atrium. Smooth part of the right atrium is otherwise called as sinus venerum part. Am I correct?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yes, so that is the reason for that. As it is derived from right horn of the sinus venosus, it is called as sinus venerum part. At the same time, if you see the left horn, it is getting degenerated. It is not completely, it is getting degenerated to form your coronary sinus. So that is the development of your coronary sinus. Coronary sinus is derived from left horn of the sinus venosus. Okay, so these are the parts of your fused endothelial heart tube: bulbous cordis, ventricle, atrium, and sinus venosus with two horns. If you take this bulbous cordis, it is having two parts. This proximal part is called as conus, distal part is called as truncus arteriosus. Now you have to imagine we know that final position of your atria and ventricles of our adult heart. But during development, it is present as a single tube only. It is a single tube extending from cranial to caudal. All are in communication with each other. Okay, it is present like a single tube only. Same thing, where bulbous cordis divided into conus and truncus arteriosus, primitive ventricle, primitive atrium, sinus venosus with two horns. Sinus venosus with two horns, atrium, ventricle, your bulbous cordis divided into conus cordis and truncus cordis. So now you see what are all the structures derived from each. As a summary, you can see. Please read. Any one of you read what is derived from truncus arteriosus?
Forms ascending aorta and pulmonary trunk.
Yes. To note that ascending aorta is getting originated from
Truncus
Truncus
arteriosus.
not development in adult heart aorta. Ascending
The
aorta
left
is coming from
Ventricle.
left ventricle. Pulmonary trunk,
Right ventricle.
Right
right ventricle. Note that even though pulmonary trunk is separately getting originated from your right ventricle, your ascending aorta is getting originated from your left ventricle. Both these structures are derived from a common tubular part of fused endothelial heart tube. Next, conus. Read about conus, one of you.
Conus is absorbed into ventricle to form a chamber which is partitioned into right and left ventricle.
So the conus is getting absorbed into this ventricle. So this conus is absorbed into the ventricle. So here you see already you know that we have right ventricle and left ventricle, but you have here only one ventricle. This one ventricle is getting divided into right and left after the formation of the septum in between the two. So what is derived from exactly from the conus means, so already you studied about the interior of right ventricle, which is the outflowing part of the right ventricle. Srinivas,
Medial.
please wait. Srinivasan,
Yes, sir.
which is the outflowing part of right ventricle. What is the name given to it?
The pulmonary trunk, sir.
Pulmonary trunk, okay. So that is separate artery originated from the right ventricle. Which one of that, which part of your right ventricle is continuing as your pulmonary trunk? Outflowing part, separate name is there. Advait, number 3, Advait. Advait is there or not? So this is the 4th time I am calling you, but you are not in the meeting. Advait? Ajit Krishnan?
Yes, sir.
Ajit Krishnan?
Yes, sir.
Number 5. Ajit is there or not?
Yes, sir.
Number 5, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Yes. Which is the outflowing part of right ventricle? Number 10. Number 10.
Yes, sir.
Which is the outflowing part of right ventricle? Yes. Is it very difficult to unmute and talk? Yes, students, please tell.
So the infundibulum.
Infundibulum.
Conus artery.
Infundibulum.
Infundibulum. Infundibulum. So what is that corresponding part of infundibulum present in the left ventricle?
So the pulmonary trunk.
Left ventricle, man. Pulmonary.
Sir,
Left ventricle is not yet taken, sir.
Not yet taken.
Aortic vestibule.
Vestibule.
Vestibule, sir.
Very
Aortic.
good, very good. Vestibule, aortic vestibule. So if you see this right ventricle, if you open and see, the outflowing part of the right ventricle is smooth. It is funnel, like an inverted funnel. So that's why it is called as infundibulum. If you open the left ventricle and see, entire left ventricle will be muscular, except small area that is called as aortic vestibule. From that only we have origin of our ascending aorta, that is called as aortic vestibule. So your infundibulum of right ventricle and aortic vestibule of the left ventricle, both are derived from this conus. Note that one structure is in the right ventricle, one structure is in the left ventricle. So next you know that ventricular chamber. This ventricle will be divided into right and left. Next you see that atrium. So here also we have only one atrium. So this will be divided into right atrium and left atrium. So now you see that your conus is in communication with ventricle. So that communication is there. Like that, your atrium and ventricle is in communication with each other. That is called as atrioventricular canal. So that is the communication between atrium and the ventricle. So now you see, if you, this is your right horn of sinus venosus, this is your left horn of sinus venosus. See the each horn. What are all the structures opening into the horns is important for MCQ. Read that on the right side, right common cardinal vein. that is giving rise to superior vena cava. Next, your umbilical vein, right umbilical vein. So already you heard about it. So what about the left umbilical vein?
Forms
Ligamentum hepatis.
ligamentum teres.
Ligamentum
teres
teres
hepatis.
hepatis. So right umbilical vein disappears in the early stage itself. Next, another vein, that is right vitelline vein, forming your inferior vena cava. So what you have to remember, three veins are opening into the your right and left horns of sinus venosus. Right common cardinal vein, right umbilical vein, right vitelline vein on the right side. Like that, the same veins on the left side. Common cardinal vein coming from the body wall, umbilical vein is coming from the placenta, vitelline vein is coming from the yolk sac. Vitelline vein from the yolk sac, umbilical vein already you know it is from placenta. Then your common cardinal vein is coming from the body wall. So these are the three veins opening into the horns of the sinus venosus. Like that on the other side also. So right and left horn of the sinus venosus. So during the further development of heart, this right horn will get enlarged. At the same time, your left horn will undergo regression. Okay, so now this enlarged right horn will be absorbed into the right half of the primitive atrial chamber. Now you can understand. So already you studied about the right atrium. Right atrium is having anterior rough part. So on that anterior rough part is derived from this right half of the primitive atrial chamber. The posterior smooth part is derived from this right horn of the sinus venosus. So we note that anterior and posterior. Anterior rough part, posterior smooth part. Am I correct or reversal is correct?
So left horn is absorbed into the
Left one is absorbed into right atrium. What do you want to tell?
yes, right.
No, right horn. Right horn is enlarged and getting absorbed into the right half of the atrium to form your right atrium, entire right atrium. Left horn regresses and forms your coronary sinus only. Only right horn is getting absorbed into the right half of the primitive atrial chamber to form posterior smooth part. What I asked is, anterior part is rough, posterior part is smooth. Is it
Yes,
correct
sir.
or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Posterior
Yes.
part is smooth.
Yes. Now you see, it is cranial and caudal. The anterior rough part is cranial. Your posterior smooth part is caudal. So how we are getting that adult position, that we have to see. So before that, you see above downwards, once again see truncus arteriosus gives rise to ascending aorta and pulmonary trunk. Conus gives rise to infundibulum and aortic vestibule. This common ventricular chamber gives rise to right ventricle and left ventricle. The atrium gives rise to right atrium and left atrium. Right horn of the sinus venosus is forming the posterior smooth part of the right atrium. Left horn regresses to form coronary sinus. Now, all these structures are in communication with each other. That is one point. Another thing, ascending aorta and pulmonary trunk in communication with each other. Your both ventricles are in communication with each other. So what we need now is formation of a septum. Formation of a septum separating ascending aorta and pulmonary trunk, separating where aortic vestibule and infundibulum, separating the primitive right half of the ventricle and the left half of the ventricle, right there separating where right half of the atrium and left half of the atrium. So what we need here is a septum. Formation of cardiac septa, that is called as formation of cardiac septa. Out of that, your septum, what is getting formed in the atrium is very important for you, because atrial septal defect, like that ventricular septal defect you have, like that the septal defect here is the septum what is formed here, separating your conus and your aortic vestibule. Your ascending aorta and pulmonary trunk is called as spiral septum. So because of the orientation of the septum, it is called as spiral septum. So the spiral septum separates your are formed in the truncus arteriosus and conus to separate aortic vestibule and your infundibulum, at the same time ascending aorta and pulmonary trunk. So the function is entirely different. Function of your pulmonary trunk and your ascending aorta is entirely different. So that's why we need a septum here. If once septum is formed, you will be having separation of all these structures. So that only we are going to see in another 1 or 2 classes in the development of heart. Another one more thing what you need is, this is the arrangement of the fused endothelial heart tube from arterial end to venous vent. One below other we have, but your adult form position of various chambers, you know. So where we have right atrium and left atrium, where we have right ventricle and left ventricle. So now if you see the outline of pericardium, it will be like this one. It will be covering only this part of the your heart tube. Remaining part of the heart tube will be outside the pericardium only. So to get accommodated into the pericardial cavity, we have formation of cardiac loop. Formation of cardiac loop. So that is important. So if there is any defect in the formation of cardiac loop, that only leads to your dextrocardia. So already we told, some of you told dextrocardia. So when it descends downwards, you will be having direction. So if there is any change in the direction, that only leads to dextrocardia. That is called as formation of cardiac loop. Are you clear with this picture?
Yes, sir.
Anything
Yes,
you
sir.
want to explain in this? So this is very, very important. This is the basic. If you understand this only, we can proceed further about the formation of cardiac loop. Now you should have the mental picture of our adult heart. Both atria, both ventricle, where we have, that's why that gross anatomy is very important. If you understand that gross anatomy, then only we can read about your embryology. Same thing given in color diagram. Now this cardiac loop we will see now. Now clearly all of you read these diagrams. See that outline of your pericardium, how these bulbous cordis, ventricle, atrium and all there in relation to your pericardium. Entire atrium and sinus venosus outside. So now to getting accommodated into the pericardial cavity, or otherwise to attain the final position of your cardiac chambers, we have formation of cardiac loop. See that the bulbous cordis. So bulbous cordis is divided into conus and truncus arteriosus. So that descends downwards, or otherwise it is called as caudal. It is descending downwards onto the right. Your bulbous cordis part descends downwards onto the right. Your atrial part goes up as well as dorsal aspect. So it is dorsocranial. So originally both the atria are on the dorsal aspect. So that is the reason for that. So this atrial chamber goes up and dorsal. Your bulbous cordis comes down to ventral. Down and ventral. This is dorsal and cranial. In this direction, we have formation of cardiac loop. So once you attain this cardiac loop, the entire part of your heart will be inside the pericardium. So this is formation of cardiac loop. If there is reverse in this direction of formation of your cardiac loop, that only leads to dextrocardia. See the next picture, you can understand. This is the final position of heart after your formation of cardiac loop. See that both atria are on the dorsal aspect and above. Both atria are above and dorsal. Both ventricle are down and ventral. So that's what the cardiac loop is formed. So this bulbous cordis, that is divided into conus and your truncus arteriosus and your ventricle. So this part descends downwards right unto the ventral. Okay, so that's why both ventricles are on the ventral aspect as well as down. This atrium is going up and dorsal. That's why both atria are on the dorsal aspect. So this is called as formation of cardiac loop. So if there is any defect in this, that only leads to your dextrocardia. So that is the basis of your dextrocardia. Defect in the formation of cardiac loop leads to your dextrocardia. So see this picture. Closely observe, you can understand that formation of cardiac loop and the position of the champus. See that? This is your bulbous cordis, ventricle. See that? This descending down as well as ventral. That's why both ventricles are on the ventral aspect. Now atrium and sinus venosus. See that slowly it will go up and dorsal.
Sir, the septum already formed, sir.
Simultaneously everything will take place. See that your atrium is going up. Yes, see that is going up, up, up. So finally atria will be on the dorsal aspect. Same time above to the ventricles. So this is the formation of our cardiac loop. So now you understand. So what we have seen before the loop formation, our atrium and sinus venosus are caudal to the ventricles. Now after the formation of this cardiac loop, they are going behind and above, dorsal and cranial otherwise, dorsal and cranial. So that's what the loop is formed. Now you have to imagine that parts of various parts of the endothelial heart tube, cranial to caudal, before the formation of cardiac loop. Truncus arteriosus, conus, ventricle, atrium, sinus venosus. All are in communication with each other. That also I told. Atrium is in communication with ventricle. So atrioventricular canal. Your atrium is in communication with sinus venosus. So that opening will be called as your sinoatrial opening. Sinoatrial opening. So now imagine what will happen to that communication also. So along with this, they are also getting moved. So that is also important. What will be the position of atrioventricular canal? What will be the position of your sinoatrial orifice? That also you have to imagine now. Now, so this is the normal formation of cardiac loop in this direction. Now the reversal leads to your dextrocardia. Okay, so that much is enough for you. Remember that one event is there that is called as formation of cardiac loop. Reversal takes place means you will get your dextrocardia. So once I already explained, now imagine this as well as the loop. So now this atrium and sinoatrial orifice are going up. This part is coming down in this direction. This part is going up behind that. So ventricles comes to anterior as well as caudal. Your atrium and sinus venosus going up and dorsum. So dorsocranial, ventrocaudal. That you remember. Ventrocaudal. It is coming down as well as anterior. That's why both ventricles are anterior. In the video nicely it is given. Your atrium is going up and dorsum. That's why it is called as dorsocranial. Now you imagine this is the fate of your sinoatrial orifice. So originally, if you see this, it will be in transverse position. So this sinoatrial orifice will be transverse. Okay. So due to the enlargement of your right horn of the sinus venosus, the transversely placed your sinoatrial orifice will be oriented vertically. This is due to that formation of loop as well as your regression of left horn and the enlargement of right horn. So now important point. So now you see that sinoatrial orifice, it is guarded by valve. So see that on the right side we have right venous valve, on the left side we have left venous valve. Both valves are getting fused cranially. So that valve is called as septum spurium. Septum spurium. So now you are going to learn different septa. So first one is septum spurium. So because of this, these two valves are getting attached to the common roof of the common atrial chamber. Roof of the common atrial chamber. Imagine now this is as atrium. Behind that we have our sinus venosus. So the transversely oriented orifice becomes vertically oriented after the enlargement of the right horn and the regression of the left horn at the same time loop formation. So right venous valve, left venous valve, they are guarding the sinoatrial orifice. If you trace these two valves, they are getting attached to form septum spurium. Finally, septum spurium will be attached to roof of the common atrial chamber. At the same time, what happens? You already told ventricle and the atrium, they are getting separated as right half and left half. Okay, so where we have formation of a septum, that we will see in detail. At the same time, we are having separation of your atrioventricular canal also. So this is before the formation of septum. So in the atrioventricular canal, you will be having formation of two cushions, dorsal and ventral, or otherwise we used to tell as septum. This is the another septum. This septum is called as septum intermedium. The septum what is formed in the atrioventricular canal is called as septum intermedium, or otherwise AV cushion. That is
Sir?
atrioventricular cushion or your septum intermedium. Yes.
So which level of the tract does this happen in?
Which level means?
So which part of the thing, so the canal does it happen in?
So this is atrioventricular canal.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so this is the side. One cushion will be on the anterior aspect, other will be on the posterior aspect. So both will fuse. Okay, automatically it will be separated into right half and left half. So it is nicely given here. One is in the anterior wall, other one is in the posterior wall. So ventral and dorsal AV cushion. So both are getting fused means it will be divided into right half and left half. Okay, so atrioventricular canal is also getting separated. So now we will see about the development of atria first. So already you are very clear with that. Your right atrium. So the right atrium is very important essay question. So in that definitely we ask, add a note on its development. What is the development of right atrium? See that development of right atrium. So where right half of the primitive atrial chamber. So that already I have shown that. So this is your atrium. This is the ventricle. So this is the right half. This is the left half. So here you will be having formation of septum. So right half is coming to the right atrium. Left half is coming to the left atrium. But there is some differences there that I will tell later on. Okay, so right half of the primitive atrial chamber forms anterior rough part of your right atrium is derived from your right half of the primitive atrial chamber. Next, absorption of sinus venosus. Already I told, right hand of the sinus venosus undergoes enlargement, getting absorbed into the your primitive right half of the atrial chamber to form posterior smooth part. Posterior after the formation of cardiac loop. Next, your right half of the AV canal. So the already you know that AV canal is divided into right half and left half. Right half is involved in the formation of your right atrium. So these are all the structures involved in the development of right atrium. Simply you can write anterior rough part. Otherwise, what is that muscle fiber present in it?
So
Muscle fiber
muscularis
present in the anterior rough part is called as
something pectinati, muscularis
musculi
pectinati.
pectinati. Musculi pectinati. So the muscle fibers of atrium are called as pectinate muscles. So muscle fibers or ventricles are called as
Trabeculae.
Trabecular carni.
trabeculae cardiae. Trabeculae cardiae. So musculi pectinati are there in the anterior part. So the anterior rough part is derived. Please read like that: anterior rough part, posterior smooth part. Even though we are repeating during gross anatomy as well as embryology class, finally in the exam we used to get the reversal only, even in the test also. Okay, so anterior rough, posterior smooth. Now you should not forget about it because you know the development also. So right hand of the sinus venosus getting absorbed to form your posterior smooth part. That's why it is called as sinus venerum part. That's why it is called as sinus venerum part. Okay. So next small part of your right atrium is developed from the right half of the AV canal also. Now already I explained about the venous end as well as your arterial. So this is the venous end with the right horn and left horn and the veins opening. Common cardinal vein coming from the body wall, umbilical vein coming from the your placenta, vitelline vein coming from the yolk sac. So like that, if you see, I told bulbous cord is divided into conus and truncus arteriosus. So this truncus arteriosus gives rise to ascending aorta as well as pulmonary trunk. If you trace the ascending aorta, that will be in continuation with your already I told about the pharyngeal arches that we are going to learn only in the head and neck. For each arch, we will be having, so how many arches are getting formed? Something I told about it yesterday. Usually 6 arches, 5th arch will disappear. Okay, so for each arch, we will be having a separate artery. So that artery is called as aortic arch arteries, first arch artery, second arch artery, like that. So if you trace that ascending aorta or your truncus arteriosus, that will be in communication with your pharyngeal arch arteries. Before that, you have a small part that is called as ventral aorta. So that I will explain with some other picture in other classes. What is ventral aorta and dorsal aorta? Finally, in adult life, we have only one aorta that is getting divided into ascending aorta, arch of aorta, descending thoracic aorta, abdominal aorta. Only one aorta we have, that is on the left side. But during development, you will be having formation of 2 aortae. Basically, that aorta will be formed in the posterior abdominal wall or on the dorsal aspect. That's why we used to call it as dorsal aorta. So actually we'll be having 2 aorta, one on the right side, other one on the left side. But finally right side aorta will disappear. Only left side aorta is getting persisted to form our final form of aorta. So during cephalocaudal folding, that small part of the dorsal aorta will come to the ventral aspect to open into the developing heart. So that's why that small part of dorsal aorta coming to the ventral aspect during cephalocaudal folding is called as ventral aorta. So that we will learn in detail in while taking about your aortic arches class. Now you see this picture.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, you said there are 6 aortic arches, right, sir?
Yes, out of that 5th one will disappear.
Sir, so how did it form only 2 ventral and dorsal aorta, sir?
Aorta is different. So connecting these 2 aorta, ventral and dorsal aorta, you will be having aortic arch arteries.
Oh,
Aortic arch arteries are 6 in number initially, 5th will disappear. That is different.
Okay,
So
sir.
arch artery means for each pharyngeal arch, we will be having 1 artery. That is called as arch arteries or aortic arch arteries.
Oh, okay, sir.
That is different. This is different. Okay. So now see this picture. You can understand. So this is the ventral aspect. Okay. So primitive atrial chamber. So septum has been formed. So this is a right half of primitive atrial chamber. On the dorsal aspect, we have our right horn of the sinus venosus. So this right horn of the sinus venosus is getting absorbed. It is getting absorbed into this to form the posterior smooth part. So already you know that into the right horn we have opening of right common cardinal vein. Okay. So next, what are the other veins opening into the
Umbilical vein.
Umbilical vein.
right umbilical vein? So that will
Vitelline.
Vitelline.
vitelline vein. So right umbilical vein will disappear in the early stage itself. So that's why we have right vitelline vein forming your IVC, right common cardinal vein forming your SVC. Now you see that. So this is regressed your left horn of the sinus venosus. Left horn of the sinus venosus form
Coronary sinus.
coronary sinus. Now already you studied your SVC is opening into right atrium, your IVC is opening into right atrium, your coronary sinus also opening into the right atrium. So this is the reason for that. If entire part of this is getting absorbed into this right half of the primitive atrial chamber, means all these vein will drain into the right atrium. Now see the next picture, you can understand this. See that? So this is the posterior smooth part. That posterior smooth part is formed by the absorption of this. That is your right arm of the sinus venosus. So now you see it is getting absorbed. So now we have the superior vena cava derived from right common cardinal vein. Inferior vena cava derived from right vitelline vein. Next, your coronary sinus, that is derived from left horn of the sinus venosus, that is also opening into it. Now this is the posterior part of your right atrium, that is your sinus venerum part, derived by the absorption of right horn of the sinus venosus into it. Now this is the anterior route part, derived from primitive right half of the primitive atrial chamber. So that is the development of right atrium. So with this, I will stop today. In the next class, we will see about the development of interatrial septum. So that is interesting one. So that is clinically important to know the your atrial septal defects. Okay. Please, I am telling, going on telling, please try to join at least 5 minutes before the class. The beginning of the class 134 was there, now it is 174. I don't know what to do. Otherwise, we will lock immediately. Once we start the class, I am going to lock it immediately. Huh? So that much interest you people have. Today is 1 hour class. I wanted to start early and to finish early. So tomorrow class is also getting cancelled. So otherwise, I would have taken all these things tomorrow also. You people not at all interested in the class, it seems. That's what that. When I was starting the class by 8:05, the strength was only 134.
Sir, you started the class at 8:05, sir.
8:05 or 8 o'clock I entered by 8, but I was waiting till 8:05 I was waiting. 134 was there.
So we didn't know. So we didn't know.
Sorry, 8:30, you know, 8:35, 8:30.
Yes, sir.
8:35 I am telling, sorry, not 8:05. Okay, so I will stop up to this. In the next, from the next class onwards, we will say about the development of left atrium, interatrial septum, like that right and left ventricle, formation of ventricular septum. Next, spiral septum, separating your ascending aorta, pulmonary trunk, infundibulum, and aortic vestibule. With that, we will conclude the development of your heart. To understand that orientation of your spiral septum, the relation between your pulmonary trunk and aorta at 3 different levels is important. So once you come to the dissection wall, you see the heart. Now itself I am telling what is the relation between pulmonary trunk and ascending aorta. Then when it forms arch of aorta, what is the relation between pulmonary trunk and arch of aorta? If you know that only, I can explain the orientation of spiral septum. Okay, so now I will stop the class it is 9:30. While stopping, I am correctly stopping by the particular time 9:30 or 9:25. But you people joining, why you are taking that much time? I don't know. Okay, students. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So we have an
Thank you,
class.
sir.
sir.
So do we have
Yes,
another
yes, sir.
class next?
Another class that yet to be scheduled.
No, sir.
So
After
tomorrow we are
like
cancelling
from
class,
9:30 to 10:30, we won't have class, no, sir.
today.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Sir, if you can
Balance
keep.
sir, taking microanatomy of trachea.
So, sir, we'll have this class after this 9:30.
Yes, yes, definitely will be having.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.